You know that exact moment in a conversation when the ambient temperature in the room just suddenly seems to plummet.
Oh, absolutely.
But like your own internal temperature just absolutely skyrockets. Your heart rate speeds up, your chest gets that familiar
Their
tightening.
breathing gets super shallow.
Right. And your brain just entirely shifts gears. I mean, you were just having a completely casual chat.
Right, about something totally meaningless.
Exactly. Maybe it was about, how to load the dishwasher or some minor discrepancy in a Tuesday morning project report or whose turn it was to pick up the dry cleaning.
Yeah, just everyday stuff.
And then in literally a fraction of a second, you are at war. Like you are no longer communicating with a partner or a colleague. You are a soldier defending a fortress.
It's a completely universal human experience. We have all been there, and it's frankly fiercely universal.
It really is. And today, we're making a massive deep dive into a stack of notes, psychological research, and neurological studies that tackle this exact topic.
Yeah.
Because it affects every single one of us on a daily basis.
Yeah, we're looking at the raw mechanics of arguments, the biology of emotional intelligence, and, the actual physical implementation of mindfulness.
Right. And we are looking at this entire stack of research through one overarching, honestly, incredibly stubborn question. It's the question we're going to be circling back to again and again today.
And that is,
Why do we often sacrifice our peace just to be right?
it really is like the ultimate human paradox.
Fiercely.
Because if you ask anyone on the street what they want out of life, they will almost universally claim they want a peaceful, happy, low-stress existence.
Right. Everyone wants peace.
Yeah, but then we will voluntarily, almost eagerly throw that peace straight out the nearest window just to win a momentary, ultimately meaningless debate.
We really do. We'll intentionally wreck our own afternoon, spike our blood pressure, and sometimes ruin our whole week.
Just to extract a verbal concession from someone else. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So to figure out why we do this to ourselves, we have to pull apart the invisible architecture of our conflicts.
Right. We have to look under the hood.
Exactly. We need to look at the evolutionary biology of the ego, the hidden physiological tax we pay when we actually, quote unquote, win these battles.
Because winning isn't always winning, right?
Definitely not. And we'll look at the profound difference between, the freeze response of a doormat and the active prefrontal inhibition of a truly wise person. We really want to get into the mechanics of how to actually protect your inner peace in the heat of the moment.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it is deeply funny in a sort of dark way, how easily we get pulled into that vortex.
Oh, it is.
We prioritize this fleeting, momentary win over our own biological well-being. But, before we can actually choose peace, we really need to understand the invisible forces driving us into these conflicts in the first place.
Right, the root causes.
Yeah, so what is the fundamental anatomy of an argument? Because, reading through the research for this deep dive, this psychological need to prove we are right isn't just a quirky personality trait.
No, not at all.
It is unbelievably intense. It reads like it's literally hardwired into our biology.
It is entirely hardwired. To understand why we argue with such ferocity over things that fundamentally just do not matter, we have to look at how our brains process threats.
Okay, lay it on me.
So we have this almond-shaped cluster of nuclei deep in the temporal lobe. It's called the amygdala.
Right, the fight or flight center.
Exactly. Its primary job is threat detection. Now, for most of human history, threats were purely physical. A predator, a hostile neighboring tribe, a falling rock.
The classic caveman stuff.
Yeah, but as society evolved and those physical threats diminished, the amygdala didn't just, pack up and go on vacation.
It had to find a new job.
Right. It remapped itself to monitor social and psychological threats.
Wait, really? So it treats a bruised ego the same way it treats an actual, literal physical attack?
Biologically speaking, yes. To the primitive parts of our brain, a threat to our belief system or our self-image is processed using the exact same neural circuitry as a physical threat.
That is wild.
Yeah, so when someone says, you're wrong about that spreadsheet, your brain doesn't just hear a difference of professional opinion.
It hears a lion roaring.
Basically, the amygdala sounds the alarm and your brain hears, you are incompetent, you are losing status within the tribe, you are going to be exiled, and if you are exiled, you will starve and die.
Oh, wow. That escalated quickly. From a minor spreadsheet error to literally starving in the wilderness.
I know it sounds extreme when you say it out loud, but that genuinely explains the physical reaction we get.
It totally does. That explains the tight chest and the racing heart rate. We are literally preparing to fight for our lives.
Right. It's a massive neurochemical cascade. Your hypothalamus signals your adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol.
The stress hormones.
Yeah, and blood flow is literally diverted away from your digestive system and your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical reasoning part of your brain, and it gets routed to your extremities.
So you could literally fight or run away.
Exactly. This is why you literally cannot think straight when you are furious. You physically don't have the blood flow in your logic center.
That makes so much sense.
But the crucial distinction we need to make here, which is really the bedrock of the research we're looking at, is the profound difference between defending the truth and defending the ego.
Okay, but how do we actually spot that difference in ourselves in real time?
It's tricky.
Because I guarantee you, every single time I'm in an argument, I absolutely believe with my whole heart that I am just defending the objective truth. Like, I feel like a crusader for facts.
Yeah, and that is the ultimate cognitive illusion. The ego is incredibly skilled at disguising itself as a champion of truth.
It's sneaky like that.
Very. But the distinction lies in the emotional flavor and the physiological state of the interaction.
Okay, explain that.
Well, when we are genuinely defending the truth, we remain relatively objective. We are just sharing information.
Right.
If the other person doesn't accept the truth, we might feel like mildly confused or frustrated, but we don't feel personally attacked.
Okay, give me an example. What does defending the truth actually look like in practice?
Think about it like this. If you tell someone the capital of France is Paris, and they vehemently insist it is Berlin,
Okay.
you don't get deeply offended. Your heart rate doesn't spike to 120 beats per minute. You don't feel this burning need to destroy their character.
No, I just think they are geographically mistaken. Or maybe they're just joking.
Exactly. You are emotionally detached from their acceptance of the fact because the capital of France has absolutely no bearing on your inherent value as a human being.
Right. My identity is not wrapped up in the GPS coordinates of the Eiffel Tower.
Precisely. But when we're defending the ego, the stakes completely change. Suddenly, the disagreement isn't about the facts at all.
It becomes about us.
Yes. It becomes about our identity, our intelligence, our worth, our status. When the ego is at the wheel, any pushback feels like a direct personal assault.
So the argument stops being about what is right
Sure.
and becomes entirely about who is right.
Exactly. And that leads to a bizarre phenomenon highlighted in our sources, where arguments frequently continue to rage on, sometimes for hours, long after the original issue no longer matters.
So, or has even been resolved.
Yeah. The original point of contention just evaporates, but the fight intensifies.
Oh, man, that
Yeah.
is so painfully accurate. I was reading through the notes on this before we started, and it made me think of this analogy.
Let's hear it.
An ego-driven argument is basically like a runaway train. Let's say the original disagreement is about who forgot to run the dishwasher.
Yeah, classic.
Right. That original problem, the dirty dishes, that was the station you left 30 miles ago. You're not even near the dishwasher station anymore.
Nope, long gone.
The dishes could magically clean themselves right now, and the fight would still continue. Because now, your ego is just shoveling coal into the engine of this train, pulling up past mistakes from, like, 3 years ago.
Oh yeah, bringing up totally unrelated things.
Exactly. Attacking the other person's character flaws, bringing up how their mother communicates, just to keep the train moving.
Just fueling the fire.
Yeah, the train has no destination anymore other than running the other person over. The conflict itself becomes the fuel.
That is a brilliant mechanical way to look at it. The ego is shoveling that coal, those past grievances, because it requires an immense amount of cognitive fuel to maintain that high energy state of anger.
Because anger is exhausting.
It is metabolically expensive. The brain needs a reason to keep pumping that adrenaline. So it literally scours your hippocampus, your memory center, for anything that justifies the current physiological state.
Wow.
It pulls up that thing they said in 2021, not because it's relevant to the dishwasher, but because it justifies the anger you're feeling right now.
Wait, so we are literally manufacturing reasons to stay mad just to match our heart rate?
Yes. Because the ego equates being wrong or backing down with a loss of status.
And we're back to the tribal survival thing.
Exactly. In our evolutionary past, losing status within your tribe could mean you don't get a share of the food, or worse, you get exiled. And an exiled human in the Pleistocene era is a dead human.
Right. Our brains simply haven't updated their software to realize that losing an argument about domestic chores with your spouse is not a life or death scenario.
They really haven't. When the facts fade into the background, the argument becomes a pure, primal battle for dominance.
The ego is basically screaming, I must assert my superiority or I will be diminished.
Exactly. And that is exactly why we sacrifice our peace. We believe, on a subconscious neurological level, that we are fighting for our survival.
Which brings us right back to that core question. Why do we often sacrifice our peace just to be right?
Because our ancient brain chemistry has tricked us into thinking we have to.
Yeah, we think if we don't win this spat about the dishes, we metaphorically die. But if the ego is driving this runaway train just to get a win, we really have to pause and look at the actual mechanics of that victory.
What it actually costs us.
Exactly. What happens when we actually win? What is the biological and emotional cost of that victory? Because I think we've all experienced winning an argument and just feeling absolutely terrible afterward.
Oh, for sure. This is what the researchers call the hidden tax of winning. And let me tell you, the tax is incredibly steep.
I can imagine.
When we constantly need to win, we are paying for those victories with damaged relationships, increased chronic stress, stolen happiness, and this lingering emotional exhaustion that persists long after the conversation ends.
It just drains you.
It does. There's a central paradox at play here that we really need to sit with. Winning an argument often directly equals losing your peace.
Winning an argument equals losing your peace. Man. It reminds me of the concept of a Pyrrhic victory from history, where the king wins the battle, but half his army is wiped out in the process.
Right, so the victory is essentially a devastating defeat.
Yeah, exactly. But how does this work biologically?
Mm.
If I win the argument, shouldn't my brain reward me with dopamine and make me feel great? I mean, I established dominance, right?
Well, it might give you a microdose of dopamine for asserting dominance, sure, but that is immediately drowned out by the cortisol saturation in your system.
So the stress hormone takes over.
Yeah, let's look at the physiological toll. The state of stress and anxiety doesn't just vanish the moment someone throws their hands up and says, "Fine, you're right, we'll do it your way."
Wait, why not? The threat is gone. Right, they surrendered.
The social threat is gone, sure, but the chemicals are still in your bloodstream. Cortisol has a half-life of about 66 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That means even an hour after the argument is completely over, half of that stress hormone is still coursing through your veins, keeping your nervous system deeply dysregulated.
That's why it takes so long to calm down.
Exactly. You've just spent immense cognitive energy building verbal defenses, anticipating their counterattacks, launching your own strikes. Your body is still operating as if a tiger is in the room. You are left completely metabolically depleted.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because it doesn't even stop there. The argument isn't really over when the talking stops.
Oh, not at all.
Think about the phantom argument in the shower, hours later. You know what I'm talking about.
The shower debates, yes.
You supposedly won the debate with your coworker at 2 p.m. It's now 8 p.m. You're taking a shower, and you are literally rehearsing the argument in your head.
Over and over.
You're thinking of even better, sharper points you could have made. You are inventing scenarios where they try to bring it up again tomorrow so you can crush them even harder.
Oh, yeah, we've all done it.
Your heart is racing all over again, your breathing is shallow, and your relaxation for the entire evening is just gone. Why on earth do our brains torture us like this when we already won?
That phenomenon is tied to a network in the brain called the default mode network, or DMN.
Okay, what does that do?
The DMN activates when we aren't focused on a specific external task, like when we're showering, driving, or, trying to fall asleep.
The idle times.
Right. It's responsible for mind wandering, self-reflection, and unfortunately, rumination. Because your brain still has elevated stress hormones, the DMN looks for a narrative to attach to that physical feeling of stress.
Oh, so it just loops back to the argument.
Exactly. It goes back to the unresolved emotional tension of the argument. You are rehearsing the argument because your brain is trying to consolidate the memory and prepare a better defense for future attacks.
Wait, so even though I won, my brain is preparing for the sequel.
Yes. And every time you rehearse it, you trigger another minor release of cortisol. You are trapped in a self-sustaining loop of stress.
That sounds miserable.
It is. So we have to ask, did you actually win? If your peace is completely destroyed for the next 12 hours, if you are agitated and unable to enjoy your evening, who is the real winner there?
Nobody. I mean, the ego won, but I lost.
Precisely. And if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it becomes clear how destructive this is to our social fabric.
How so?
Well, think about the foundation of sustainable relationships. Whether it's a marriage, a friendship, or a professional partnership, a relationship operates like a shared bank account of trust, safety, and goodwill.
Right, an emotional bank account.
Yeah. Every time you prioritize your ego and insist on extracting a concession at the expense of the other person's feelings, you are making a massive withdrawal from that account.
Because even if they concede, they feel defeated and resentful.
Exactly. You've introduced a dynamic of dominance and submission into a partnership of equals.
Which is toxic.
Over time, if every interaction is a battle to be won, the foundation of the relationship erodes completely. The trust account goes bankrupt. The winner is left standing in the ruins of their own happiness, completely alone with the cold comfort of being right.
You're just sitting alone on your throne of correctness, but the castle is completely empty.
That's a great way to put it.
It's such a hollow, depressing victory, and it makes you realize how frequently we fall into this exact trap in our daily lives without even noticing.
All the time.
Now that we understand the heavy biological and relational tax we pay for these ego-driven victories, let's look at the specific everyday environments where we most frequently lose our peace.
The everyday battlegrounds.
Yeah, the research outlines these common battlegrounds, and they are incredibly recognizable. Let's start with the most intimate one, domestic disagreements. Family, partners, roommates.
The people closest to us.
Why is it that the people we love the most are the ones who can trigger the most vicious ego responses?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? You would think we'd be most peaceful with the people we love. But domestic environments are highly volatile battlegrounds precisely because of vulnerability.
Right, our guard is down.
Exactly. In the outside world, we wear armor. We have a professional persona. But at home, the armor comes off. We expect home to be a sanctuary of unconditional positive regard.
A safe zone.
Yeah. So when a partner criticizes us, even over something as trivial as how we folded the towels, it doesn't just feel like a critique of our towel folding technique. It feels like a betrayal of that sanctuary.
Wow, so a minor critique feels magnified because it's coming from inside the house, literally and metaphorically.
Yes. The ego screams, even here, even my safe person thinks I'm inadequate.
The stakes feel huge.
They feel incredibly high because our emotional survival feels tethered to this person's approval. When they misunderstand us or point out a flaw, the ego's instinct is to immediately criticize them back to level the playing field and reestablish safety through mutual destruction.
Oh, I folded the towels wrong. Well, you forgot to pay the electricity bill last month.
Exactly.
There's the runaway train getting another shovel of coal. We use their past mistakes as a shield.
Yeah, anything to deflect.
But what about the workplace? Because that's a completely different environment with different rules, yet people lose their minds at work all the time over incredibly minor things.
The workplace is a unique battleground because it is directly tied to our livelihood and our professional competence. This is where status threats are the most literal.
Because status equals paychecks.
Exactly. Let's look at a classic scenario. The CC'd email.
No.
You make a minor error on a report, and a colleague points it out in an email, but they CC your boss and maybe their boss too.
Oh, the physical reaction to that is instantaneous. It's like taking a shot of adrenaline straight to the heart.
It really is.
The urge to hit reply all and launch a tactical nuclear strike of self-defense is so overwhelming. I feel like my fingers just start typing before I even know what I'm doing.
Because your amygdala has just registered a direct threat to your survival.
From an email.
Yeah, because in the modern world, money is equivalent to food and shelter. Your boss controls your money. Therefore, a colleague making you look incompetent in front of your boss is a threat to your food and shelter.
It's all connected.
The ego flares up to protect your life. The instinct is to hit reply all, tear apart their logic, point out 3 mistakes they made last week, and publicly restore your dominance.
I get the theory. I really do. But in practice, if I just stay silent when a coworker wrongly accuses me of a mistake in front of the boss,
Yeah.
aren't I just letting them damage my reputation? Like, if I don't correct the record, don't I lose?
That is the exact friction point where most people get stuck. But let's ask our core question again. Why do we sacrifice our peace just to be right?
Right.
Engaging in that public, highly emotional email war might prove you were technically correct about a data point on page 4 of the spreadsheet. But look at the holistic costs.
It's usually a mess.
It damages your working relationship with that colleague irreparably. It makes you look defensive, combative, and easily rattled to your boss, who, by the way, probably doesn't care about the typo, but does care that you just caused a massive team drama.
They just want the work done without the headache.
Exactly. And as we discussed, it spikes your cortisol for the rest of the day, ruining your evening. You traded your peace, your focus, and your professional dignity for a fleeting moment of pride.
So, what's the alternative then? How do you handle the CC'd email without going to war?
You handle it without the ego. You reply privately to the colleague, or you address it in a calm, matter-of-fact way that focuses entirely on solving the problem, not on assigning blame or defending your
You
intellect.
just take the heat out of it.
You de-escalate. You refuse to let their provocation dictate your nervous system.
That requires so much restraint. But it makes perfect sense. Now, if the workplace is a tactical, status-driven battleground, social media is just the Wild West for the ego.
Oh, absolutely.
Engaging with hurtful comments or debating strangers online feels like the absolute drain of all drains. But people spend hours doing it. Why?
Because social media platforms are practically engineered in laboratories to trigger the ego and bypass our rational, peaceful minds.
They want us agitated.
They do. The platforms run on an algorithm that optimizes for engagement, and neurological studies show that outrage and moral superiority are the most highly engaging emotions we have.
I usually compare social media debates to shadowboxing in a dark room, but that doesn't really capture the biological hook, does it? It's more insidious than that.
It is much more insidious. It's not shadowboxing. It's like sitting at a rigged slot machine where the payout isn't money, but a tiny, toxic squirt of cortisol and dopamine.
That is a terrifying image.
It's accurate, though. You see a comment from a stranger that violates your worldview, your amygdala fires, you pull the lever by typing out a furious, devastating reply.
Hoping to win the jackpot of changing their mind.
Or at least publicly humiliating them to secure your tribal status. But the machine is only programmed to give you outrage.
Because the other person isn't real to us, right?
Yep.
We can't see their face.
Exactly. It's a phenomenon called de-individuation.
The individuation.
Yeah. The detachment of a screen removes all of the nonverbal cues that usually trigger empathy in the human brain mirror neurons that fire when we see someone else's facial expressions or hear the tone of their voice.
So we just see text.
Without those cues, it is incredibly easy to see the other person not as a complex human being, but as a one-dimensional avatar of everything you hate.
Wow.
The futility of this arena cannot be overstated. You are trading hours of your finite, irreplaceable life and a massive amount of your biological inner peace for the illusion of having the last word against someone whose real name you don't even know, who lives 3,000 miles away.
It is absolute madness when you break down the mechanics of it. You are literally letting a stranger command your endocrine system.
You really are.
But this brings us to a really difficult cultural hurdle. If arguing is so biologically exhausting, and if it destroys our relationships and our peace, why do we actively resist walking away?
It's a great question.
And I think the sources point to a really deep, stubborn societal conditioning. We resist walking away because society has severely mislabeled what walking away actually means. We need to completely redefine our concepts of strength, weakness, and wisdom.
This is perhaps the most transformative concept in the research we are looking at today. Our modern culture, heavily influenced by media and political theater, often equates loudness, dominance, verbal aggression, and having the last word with strength.
Right, the loudest guy in the room is the strongest.
We are taught that if you back down, if you walk away from a provocation, you are weak. You lost the confrontation.
But that's a lie.
It is. True psychological and emotional maturity requires breaking down this false binary entirely. The reality of human neurology shows us the exact opposite.
Okay, unpack that.
Walking away is not giving up. Staying calm is not surrender. And forgiveness is not losing.
Yes. Let's linger on that for a second. Walking away is not giving up. It absolutely feels like giving up to the ego, but what is it really from a psychological standpoint?
It is the ultimate display of cognitive self-control. Think about the biological cascade we discussed earlier. When provoked, the primal brain wants to fight.
It's an automatic reflex.
Exactly. Reacting with anger is the easiest, most automated thing a human being can do. A toddler can react with rage. A dog barks when barked at. It is a low-level, unthinking reflex.
So reacting requires zero actual strength.
Zero emotional heavy lifting, but choosing silence. Choosing to take a breath, process the insult, and intentionally not engage.
That's harder.
Much harder. That requires the prefrontal cortex to act as a massive braking system on the amygdala. It requires overriding millions of years of evolutionary programming that is screaming at you to fight.
So restraint is the real power.
The inhibition of an impulse requires an immense amount of metabolic energy and psychological strength.
Okay, I hear you, but I have to push back here.
Please do.
Because I think there is a very fine line that a lot of people struggle to see.
Hmm.
If someone is being openly disrespectful to you or treating you poorly and you just stay silent and walk away, how do we distinguish between being a doormat and being emotionally mature?
That's a fair point.
Because there is a very real difference between protecting your peace and just letting people abuse you. If I never argue, aren't I just a victim?
That is a vital distinction to make, and it's the exact trap many people fall into when trying to adopt mindfulness practices. They confuse passivity with peace.
Right.
The key distinction between a doormat and an emotionally mature person lies in a single psychological mechanism: intentionality.
Intentionality. How does that change the dynamic?
Well, being a doormat means you stay silent out of fear. You are experiencing a trauma response, specifically the freeze or fawn response.
You're paralyzed.
You are afraid of the conflict, you lack internal boundaries, and you let people cross your lines because you are too psychologically intimidated to speak up. That is passive.
You have no agency.
Right. You are a helpless victim of the interaction, and you internalize the resentment, which destroys your peace anyway.
Okay, so the doormat is freezing out of fear. What is the emotionally mature person doing?
The emotionally mature person is operating from a place of active choice. When you are operating from wisdom, you aren't retreating out of fear. You are actively, deliberately choosing where to spend your emotional currency.
It's an active decision.
Yes. Protecting your peace is a proactive defense system, not a passive surrender. Let me give you an analogy that moves away from the classic mountain and cloud imagery, which can feel a bit passive.
Yeah, give me something more tactical.
Think of emotional maturity like the martial art of Aikido.
Aikido, that's the one where you use the attacker's momentum against them, right?
Exactly. In Aikido, when someone lunges at you, you don't stand there rigidly and take the punch. That's being a doormat.
Right.
But you also don't meet their force with your own force by punching back. That's the ego-driven argument. Instead, you intentionally step slightly to the side.
Oh, wow.
You let their angry, chaotic momentum carry them right past you. You don't absorb their kinetic energy, and you don't expend your own energy trying to stop them. You remain perfectly balanced and centered, while they stumble forward, unbalanced by their own rage.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. You are making an active choice to step aside. Let's apply that to the coworker making a snide comment.
Perfect. So a doormat stays silent out of fear of the coworker, stews in resentment, feels small, and carries that toxic cortisol all day.
Miserable.
An emotionally mature person hears the comment, evaluates it objectively, recognizes that engaging with it will only feed the coworker's need for drama and drain their own precious energy.
And they intentionally choose to step aside.
Yes, they let the snide comment fly past them into the void. They aren't shrinking. They are standing firm in their own peace, utterly unaffected by the turbulence of the other person.
You are deciding that their chaos is just not worthy of your reaction. That actually feels infinitely more powerful than yelling back.
It really does.
It really answers our core question. Why do we often sacrifice our peace just to be right? By showing us that we absolutely do not have to.
Right, it's a choice.
We are choosing to sacrifice it, which means we can choose not to. But recognizing this intellectually in a deep dive is one thing. Implementing it in the heat of the moment, when the adrenaline is already hitting the bloodstream, is another entirely.
It is the hardest part of the process. It's the difference between reading about Aikido and actually stepping onto the mat when someone is sprinting at you.
Exactly. It's all well and good to talk about being centered when we're sitting here calm and collected, but when the chest gets tight and the ego flares, how do we actually do this?
You need tools.
Yeah, how do we practice tactical peacekeeping? Because building those sustainable relationships using calmness instead of conflict requires actual physiological tools. We need to look at the practical advice from the research on when to speak and when to silence.
The sources provide some deeply effective, highly practical habits that are grounded in human neurology. And they all start with the most basic yet most difficult action a human can take in a moment of anger.
Which is?
The physical pause, taking a deep diaphragmatic breath before responding.
The pause. I have started applying this to everything, and it is an absolute game changer.
It really is.
I compare taking a deep breath and pausing to hitting a literal circuit breaker in a house before an electrical fire can start.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. I mean, the trigger happens,
Yeah.
the snide comment, the unfair criticism, and the electricity, the amygdala, starts surging through the wires of your nervous system.
The sparks are flying.
Right. If you just react on instinct, the sparks fly, the house catches fire, you yell, they yell, and the argument explodes. But if you take a deep physical breath, you physically reach out and trip the circuit breaker.
You just shut it down.
You cut the power to the runaway train.
That is scientifically exactly what happens. That physical pause isn't just a metaphor. It is biologically necessary to stop a fight.
Walk me through the science.
When you take a deep, slow breath, specifically engaging your diaphragm, you are stimulating the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerves.
Yeah, the vagus nerve is the main component of your parasympathetic nervous system, which oversees a vast array of crucial bodily functions. It controls mood, immune response, digestion, and, crucially, heart rate.
So the breath is literally a physical lever you can pull.
Exactly. When the vagus nerve is stimulated by deep breathing, it acts as a neurotransmitter highway. It sends a massive chemical signal directly to your brainstem that says, we are not being chased by a predator, we are safe.
It cancels the alarm.
It releases acetylcholine, which physically lowers your heart rate. It shifts your brain activity out of the reactive amygdala and back into the prefrontal cortex. You are literally turning your rational brain back on.
That is incredible. You are manually overriding your own fight or flight response.
Yes. And in that pause, in that newly created cognitive space where you can actually think again, you have the opportunity to ask yourself 3 vital diagnostic questions that the sources heavily emphasize.
So what does this all mean in practice? Let's walk the listener through these 3 questions because they are absolute gold for disrupting the ego.
Let's do it.
The first question you ask yourself in that newly created pause is, will this matter a week from now?
This question utilizes a psychological tool called temporal distancing.
Temporal distancing. I like that.
In the heat of the moment, the ego suffers from extreme myopia. It convinces you that this disagreement about the tone of a text message is the most consequential event in human history.
It feels like life or death right now.
But by forcing your prefrontal cortex to project forward in time, like asking, will I even remember this conversation next Tuesday? You instantly recontextualize the conflict.
You zoom out.
You force the brain to evaluate the actual stakes. And the truth is, 99% of the things we argue about daily will be completely forgotten in a week, let alone a year.
So true.
If it won't matter next week, it absolutely does not deserve your peace or your cortisol spike today. Let it go. Let it go. Okay, question number 2 to ask in the pause. Am I solving a problem or feeding my ego? I love this one because it is the ultimate diagnostic tool. It cuts right to the bone of your own intentions.
It requires radical, uncomfortable self-honesty, which is a core component of emotional intelligence.
It's hard to admit when it's just your ego.
It really is. This question forces cognitive reappraisal. You have to look at the words you are about to say and ask, are you continuing this conversation because there is a genuine logistical issue that must be resolved for a project to move forward or for your household to function safely?
Oh.
Or are you continuing it because you want the other person to admit defeat? Do you want them to confess that you are smarter, more observant, or more morally upright?
I feel like if we all honestly asked ourselves that second question, 80% of our arguments would just evaporate instantly.
Oh, easily.
Because so often, the actual problem is already solved. Someone already agreed to fix the typo, or they already agreed to pick up the milk, but we just keep hammering them about why they made the mistake in the first place. We can't just let them fix it.
No. We want them to grovel. That's pure ego.
Precisely. If you are just trying to extract an apology or an admission of intellectual inferiority, you are feeding the ego. You are no longer solving a problem. You are manufacturing suffering.
Oof, manufacturing suffering.
And that leads to the final, and perhaps most important, of the 3 vital questions. Is this conversation bringing me peace?
Wow. Is this conversation bringing me peace? It completely flips the whole script on what it means to be successful in an interaction.
It changes the whole metric.
Instead of measuring success by whether you convince the other person of your brilliance, you measure success by your own internal biological and emotional state.
Exactly. It makes your inner peace the ultimate metric of a successful interaction rather than dominance.
I love that.
If a conversation is spiraling into toxicity, if it is draining your metabolic energy, elevating your stress, and making you feel resentful, it is failing that metric.
It's not worth it.
At that point, the most victorious, powerful thing you can do is respectfully, intentionally disengage.
Okay, but let's look at the hard scenarios. What if it's a conversation you have to have?
Like a necessary conflict.
Yeah. Say it's with your partner, and it's a recurring issue regarding finances or boundaries. It will matter a week from now, and it is a real problem that needs solving.
Okay.
You can't just Aikido step away every time things get tense or you'll never resolve anything. How do we engage in necessary conflict without sacrificing our peace?
If we connect this back to the bigger picture of building sustainable, long-term relationships, the ultimate key is a fundamental shift in your objective during the conversation.
What's the shift?
You must shift your entire focus from winning the argument to understanding the other person.
Winning versus understanding. How does that change the mechanics of the fight?
When you enter a difficult conversation with the sole goal of proving you are right, you are on the offensive.
You're attacked.
The other person's amygdala detects the threat, and they go on the defensive. You are locked in combat. But when you enter with the genuine goal of understanding their perspective, not necessarily agreeing with it, but truly understanding the emotional reality of why they see it that way, you fundamentally change the neurological dynamic in the room.
Because you aren't attacking their identity, so their ego doesn't need to flare up.
Exactly. Curiosity is the opposite of judgment. When you seek to understand, you disarm the other person's ego.
How do you show that curiosity?
You ask curious, open-ended questions. Help me understand why this specific issue makes you feel so anxious, or what am I missing about your perspective here?
It's so much less threatening.
You are no longer a predator. You are an ally in problem solving. This de-escalates the nervous system, and more importantly, it fosters empathy within you.
Empathy as a tool for peace.
It is the ultimate cognitive interrupt. Empathy requires the activation of the neocortex. You cannot be locked in an ego-driven, amygdala-fueled battle for dominance while simultaneously holding genuine, curious empathy for the other person's emotional experience.
The brain literally can't do both.
The brain cannot hold both states simultaneously. Empathy is the biological antidote to ego.
Empathy is the antidote to ego. That is incredibly powerful. It really all comes back to that active, intentional choice we have to make, moment by moment, breath by breath.
It does, and it is not easy. It requires rigorous daily practice.
Right.
The ego is loud, it is ancient, and it is relentless.
You really want to shovel that coal.
It will constantly try to shovel coal into that runaway train.
Yeah.
But peace is quiet, and it is enduring.
Yeah.
Every single time you hit that circuit breaker, take a breath, stimulate your vagus nerve, and ask yourself those 3 questions, you are building the neural pathways of emotional maturity. You are literally rewiring your brain to protect your sanctuary.
This has been such an incredibly illuminating deep dive today. We started by looking at the raw, evolutionary anatomy of an argument, recognizing the uncomfortable truth that so often we aren't defending objective facts at all. We are just defending our fragile ego.
We are just driving that runaway train.
Driving it just to avoid the perceived tribal exile of feeling wrong.
And we examined the severe, hidden physiological tax we pay for those empty victories.
The cortisol saturation.
The default mode network keeping us trapped in phantom shower arguments, the eroded trust bank accounts, and the loss of our own happiness that persists long after the fighting stops.
And we completely redefined what actual strength looks like. We debunked the toxic myth that walking away makes you a passive doormat.
It's the opposite.
We realized that intentional silence, using that Aikido move to choose exactly where to spend your metabolic energy, is actually the ultimate power move. It's not weakness, it is the pinnacle of wisdom. And finally, we armed ourselves with the tactical tools, hitting that circuit breaker with a deep breath, and shifting our objective from winning to understanding to build genuine empathy.
And through every layer of this research, we kept returning to our core question. Why do we often sacrifice our peace just to be right?
And what's the verdict?
We do it because we forget our own true priorities in the heat of the moment. We forget that proving a point about a dishwasher or a spreadsheet is almost never worth the biological and emotional cost of our own tranquility.
It's just not worth it.
We forget that protecting your peace and protecting your heart is always, without exception, infinitely more valuable than winning a debate. Letting go of unnecessary battles isn't a surrender. It is a profound display of quiet, unshakable strength.
It really is. It takes a massive amount of power to choose peace. So as you go back out into your day, into your workplace, your family group chats, or just out onto the roads, navigating traffic, we want to leave you with one final powerful takeaway to mull over, an anchor for your interactions.
Keep this in mind.
Remember this. Not every victory brings peace, but every peaceful choice is already a quiet victory.